Okay, in our concluding segment, we're going to go and assemble this elbow with the other two elements we had before, the horizontal straight and the vertical straight. So we're going to build a straight, bend, straight system. We're going to build the stiffness matrices for each one of these components. We'll assemble them into a global stiffness matrix. We'll then add the anchor to either end of the system. And then we're going to calculate how much load we get in each element when it gets hot. So we're going to take, for example, 1 to 2. Imagine it as being a straight run with an anchor at either end. What is the load on each anchor when this piece of pipe heats up? It'll be equal and opposite on either end of that piece of pipe. We'll do that for the straight, the bend, and the vertical straight. That'll be our load vector then to work with our stiffness matrix. We will then compare the MathCAD results to Caesar 2. So let's bring up the MathCAD worksheet. Here's a 3-element system. Again, here's our input items. Here's our elbow. Here's our flexibility factor for our elbow. Here's our anchor stiffness values. We build our straight pipe. Here's our straight element. Now this is a local term. We're going to use this one for the first element. We're going to rotate it 270 degrees to make the vertical down element. And here's our bend terms. Just combining the work that we've done over the last few minutes here now. Here's our bend. And now we have the transfer matrix to rotate both the elbow and the vertical run to the right position in space. So I'm going to rotate the second element. This is my bend element. 1 to 2 is the horizontal run. 2 to 3 is the elbow. 3 to 4 is the vertical run. I have to translate the second two terms. So I've got the 3 individual stiffness matrices in global coordinates. Then I have to assemble them all together in this larger stiffness matrix. And it then allows me to represent the entire piping system with a stiffness matrix. So here we're bringing them in together. The first element, second element, third element. Now we add the anchor at the first node and the last node. There's our 2 anchors. They're installed in the model. And now we develop the self-load due to thermal effects. We did this in the earlier session where the load on the pipe, a straight pipe, is the area times Young's modulus times the strain rate, thermal strain rate. And that's fine for straight pipe. We can get that for 1 to 2 and 3 to 4. What I'm going to do for 2 to 3, this is our elbow, is I just ran Caesar 2 with a simple elbow with an anchor at each end, and these are the loads on that anchor. There are ways to do this by hand, but we're not going to do that today. So now I take these load vectors for each element, and then I translate them in space, the global load vectors, and I add them all together. So I have now a load vector for the entire piping system. Here's the loads on point 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, that's my load vector. I'm going to take that with my inverted stiffness matrix to find out the position. So I can invert the stiffness matrix times the load vector equals displacement. So node 1 is an anchor. Node 4 is an anchor. I have no deflection. But nodes 2 and 3 do move. And here's my deflection in the X, Y rotation, X, Y rotation. That's node 20, and I'm saying node 40 in this one. And then that rotation term, 001, comes out to be 0.0826 degrees. So I look at my Caesar 2 results, and I want to see 5992 and 6236 and 0.0826. Looks fine. And then my other terms at node 40, 6236, 5992, and 0.0826. So the same values for both MathCAD and Caesar 2. I'll bring that up in Caesar 2 now. I'm going to change my file. This is a different model, straight bend straight, and you're going to find these 4 files are delivered with the training course materials. So you can build them by hand or just use them as they're listed here. Straight bend straight. I'll open up that model, go to the input processor, straight bend straight. So this is 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4. I don't have to put any load. I'm not pushing at these endpoints at all. Instead, I'm using, there's my 0.2% strain that I want on each element of this piping system. I'll do the error check on this. And I'll look at my load cases. Just running thermal all by itself. Click the running man. Displacements, the expansion case, view the results. And there's that 5992.6236.0826. All right, so that's the final position of this piping system under that load case. Of course, once we know those deflections, we can go on and calculate load and finally stress. And that's why this output menu is sorted like this. The root solution is the position of every piece of pipe in the model under a certain load. Then once you know the position, you can calculate the internal forces and moments throughout the system to cause that position. And then once I get the local loads, I can calculate my stresses. Let's go back to our MathCAD report. And this step continues on. What are the internal loads under this thermal strain? So we know where the pipe is moving to. Here's the element 1 to 2. Node 1 doesn't move at all. Node 2 moves to that point in space. 2 to 3 is my elbow. This is the elbow's initial point deflections and rotations and ending point deflections and rotations. And here is the vertical run of pipe, beginning deflections and rotations, ending deflection rotations. So I can take this back like we did with the 2-element system. I can take my stiffness matrix times these deflection vectors, subtract out my thermal strain that I introduced initially, and this will give me then the load on each element. This is the load on the element 10 to 20, what I've been calling 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4. And if I compare them with Caesar 2, here's those same numbers we just saw a second ago. These, like right here, these numbers are the set down here. Here are my results from Caesar 2. 1079, negative 1079, 1,329,000, and negative, positive, positive. Again, I can take a look at these in Caesar 2. I'm looking at my global element forces. And we are looking at 10 to 20, 20 to 40, and 40 to 50. And there's that 1079, 1.9 million. So we now have a clear path from your input file, which describes the pipe by OD, wall thickness, material, length, and thermal strain or deflection. And we can take that, build up a stiffness matrix, calculate the final position of the piping system under that set of loads. Then from that final position, back calculate what the internal forces and moments throughout the piping system are. And then as a stress program, we go on to stress. But at this point, we've completed our review of the F equals KX portion of Caesar 2, but the real number cruncher in the program.